People always think we're attacking NASA, and we're actually NASA enthusiasts when it comes right down to it, right? We're space enthusiasts. We want accountability. We want disclosure. We want to see what's actually there, and we will accept the limitations. We'll support the limitations on what's capable of doing. We don't need to keep researching in and find out, oh, all we're looking at is CGI. If you can't do it, say so.
When I was looking at the comment section earlier this morning, what I'm seeing in there is this. People are actually saying that they're seeing a big difference between this Artemis and the Apollo photography in the videos because, number one, we're not seeing anything really on Artemis as we were on Apollo. But then one fellow also was looking at it this way. What we're seeing is reality now. What we've seen in the past is all fantasy. It's all just make-believe. Now what has to happen is our brains have to rewire themselves to reality because now we're seeing reality, and what we were seeing in the past was unreality. So now it looks fake to us.
Well, there's so many inconsistencies between 1969 moon landing and what you're seeing today as an unmanned craft, number one. Yep. Number two, it's taking 6 days to get to the moon and 6 days to get back. And that doesn't make any sense at all to me.
Now we're seeing what's real. It's taking 6 days to get there, not 3. They said that 50 years ago it was going to take 3 days to get there.
What happened with the mathematics? Who did the calculations? This is on free return. They're not underpowered. It's not like they're using a different type of injection on there. They do a burn, they get up to speed, and then they coast the rest of the way. Where is the difference in this?
Yeah, and another thing over on BitChute, one guy made a comment. He said another thing that was interesting to him was that Elon Musk has cameras placed everywhere, in the engine bays, by the engines, outside of the craft, everywhere. He has cameras for every view, every angle you can possibly get. We don't see that with Artemis 1, and yet they say that there's 24 cameras on board of this. Where are they?
They're supposed to have one on the end of one of these solar panel arrays on Orion. We're told that's how you get the pictures showing the Earth and the Moon in the same shot. Well, that says maybe, but if they can put a camera on the edge of a solar panel array, which has to be unfolded from the craft once they're up in orbit, you'd think they would be able to do rather more, as you say, rather like Elon Musk has done. You've got cameras everywhere. They've got a wonderful system of showing what's going on. Even when it goes wrong, they still show it. But with NASA, no, they tell us they put the cameras there, but they don't show any pictures from them. Well, not that I've seen. And you get the story of the photographers who had cameras placed near the launch site, and they weren't allowed to go and collect the cameras.
I was watching Fraser Crane, who's a NASA supporter, and he works at a university in British Columbia. And he was talking about the lack of photographs and lack of video coming back from the craft itself.
That's really what we would expect in a real show. Why would they put cameras all over the place like they did on Apollo? I mean, they photographed everything. They might as well have taken a little camera and put it in a capsule and swallowed it so that you could get the innards as it's traveling through the system and right out the backside. That's the way that was done with Apollo. Now we don't see any of that. And where are all these cameras? There's no video from any of these cameras. They were saying that some of those cameras were independent. And I don't know what that means, what they're saying when they mean independent. If they're independent cameras, then we're not seeing any independent video or photographs coming from those cameras.
We don't see any live streaming video. What you're looking at is animation. What they're calling about live stream is just the distance from the moon, the speed they're traveling, and the distance from the Earth. And it's called live tracking, but it's not live video. Everything they're showing is animations in there. And then when you look at the different images that they're showing on the flyby, I was watching Dr. Becky as well, her videos on the Artemis program, right? She said they came in within 80 miles of the surface. of the closest on there, and another one saying they only got within 1,000 miles of the surface. And that's showing the flyby with the moon that looks like just a potato, a fuzzy potato. It's not even in focus, and the little wee tiny Earth behind it. And then the next shot, the Earth is gigantic again. It doesn't make any sense that they're doing this. And what I'd like to say is that people that are watching our videos, we're not attacking NASA. What we want is full disclosure. We would get behind and support NASA if they gave us full disclosure on exactly what they're doing. We want to know where the limits are. And Artemis right now is showing us that they're not disclosing anything. They're not giving us a live video feed. They're not giving us any of the actual thing. They're not talking about that solar flare that, of course, will have damaged that machine. It probably will have damaged the communications. They won't be able to talk to it to modify the orbit in any way if they lost communications with all of the operations of just flying this thing. And if it was fully autonomous and it's damaged, well, then it's not coming back anyway. I've talked to other people going, oh, well, they can use resistors and that to, diffuse the extra energy. Not for that kind of power. The energy that's being produced by a solar flare, when it's crossing from one side of that vehicle to the other inside, it's more like a lightning blast, the kind of lightning blast that splits a tree in half. That's the kind of thing, and there's no way to ground it when you're in space. That energy just builds and crosses through all of the electrical components in there. They're going to be damaged. Why don't they just come up and say, yeah, we had a solar flare, we lost communications, they don't have any, not even the live tracking now, right? So whether they were controlling it from the ground or it was autonomous, if it's damaged, it's not going anywhere. And if it's in orbit around the moon, eventually it's going to crash onto the moon. The gravitational pull will pull it in. Because it is an elliptical orbit, it's going to get sucked in. And this thing about 6 days, they need to disclose what the difference is in this. Because if they're doing it with an initial boost of engine power to get up to speed and coast the rest of the way, and they're going to need to be at a certain speed to come into orbit, or same on return. I mean, it's easy, it's downhill all the way, right, when you're coming back. But they do that thing, they're coming in at 25,000 miles an hour. Well, if they're coming in at the same speed, it should take the same length of time to get from the moon back to the Earth. But now it's going to take 6 days. Doesn't make sense.
Good point, because the spacecraft has to reach escape velocity to be able to escape the gravitational attraction of the Earth. And it's fair enough that they accelerate to the 25,000 miles an hour speed of escape velocity, and then switch the motors off, because they will, as you say, coast from there on. If they need to speed up or they need to change direction, they have to fire up the rockets again.
That's right. If it's going to take 16 days, that means that they didn't reach escape velocity. They're going to have to refire the engines and continue to burn maybe several times. They're going to have to fire those up and continue to burn to be down like that average speed. In 6 days to go to the moon, you're down at 1,600 miles an hour average speed. That's not very fast at all. That's nowhere near that 25,000 miles an hour escape velocity.
No, but that is the speed that they will return with. They'll come back to Earth at that speed because of Earth's gravitational attraction. In my view, the problems really start at that point. And the point you make about animations, yes, there's a lot of animation on the Artemis program. We see a lot of pictures of rockets going all over the place, and it's all animation. How do we know what's real? How do we know what's actually happening?
It's been animation since 5 minutes after launch.
Yeah, it was animation on Apollo. When people say, well, I saw it all on television, what they were watching was animation. It wasn't real. NASA only came in with the real footage later when they worked out what had to be shown.
Yes, and I'll show you what they're showing now. And I'd like you to figure this one out. Now here we have Artemis 1. They claim this is live. Now, people in the comment section are actually asking that question. Is this live?
That's interesting.
I see it stopped image. It's too sharp. It's not sharp enough. There's all kinds of crazy comments here, but I can see why. Look at this. There's the Earth. What is this?
That's supposed to be the moon, I guess.
So then where are they?
In that elliptical orbit.
Oh no, they claim this is the live version right there, and then these two are the animations below. So if this is live as they're claiming, then what on earth is this moon and the Earth doing here?
They're claiming they're out past the moon in that elliptical orbit.
But look at the size of the moon.
Yeah, well, that changes all the time. That's why I think it's an animation. I think the only thing that they're showing that they claim to be live are the distance from the Earth, the distance, the speed they're traveling, and the distance to the moon. Because all of the other ones said live tracking.
Yeah, not this one. This is actually live view from Orion. You could see the launch, outbound journey, transit, distance. They've just passed the distant retrograde orbit is what they're claiming, because there is where the marker is.
Yeah, live from Downey Studios. Like I said, people tend not to believe us when we do the research, but when you have somebody that's directly in the field working with that kind of equipment to sit there and they explain it to you, and the biggest thing that's going to happen is it's going to take away the fantasy of space play. Because if he says, this is the kind of materials you need to work in an environment, even at a Torr value of 10 to the minus 6, go past that, well, we're restricted to 130 miles off the surface.
No. There's another story here. Spaceflight, that's the British Interplanetary Society, and they've got Orion's first step. There's the Orion, there's the moon. So they've got it there, so it obviously must be real if the British Interplanetary Society say so. And they've got quite a big article inside it. Talking of making money from space, look at the amount of money. These are artifacts from the Armstrong Family Collection. The Armstrong Family Collection. The flag that was flown directly on Apollo 11. $275,000 it sold for. And then there's all this Apollo 12 lunar module flown and lunar surface used Garland mechanical pencil from Alan Bean's personal collection with the original handwritten letter of authenticity. Sold for $52,000. There you go. Space memorabilia. This is a pencil, which is what the Russians were using. Alan Bean has not mentioned anything to do with taking pencils into space. Lunar surface used Garland mechanical pencil. $52,000. I mean, that's good money if you can get it, isn't it?
You know, they have a pocket for a little pen light flashlight. I've never seen it up for auction yet. But now that we mentioned it, I'm quite sure it's going to go up for auction. And it's going to sell for more than that. And the batteries will be the original and still working.
And they won't be.
The batteries are still working on Voyager 2.
This is Heritage Auctions. They're the people who sell these things. Consign now to our upcoming auctions. Mercury 7 astronauts. Early NASA signed group photo, signed by all. That's 7 with the Mercury astronauts. John Glenn is in there, Alan Shepard's in there, Gordon Cooper's there. $35,000. Who's paying all this money for this stuff?
It's like making a donation. They're not buying it. They're making a donation to support the cause, right?
Set of Chris Kraft's personal security badges for Apollo 6 to 17 with additional signed photo directly from his estate with certificate of authenticity. There we go. That's the Chris Kraft collection of badges. And that was sold for $42,500. That's not the asking price. That's what they sold for. It's wonderful stuff. Yeah, signature auction. Space exploration signature auction. June 2023, this was. So obviously it's ongoing, these auctions, and it's a very good way for astronauts to enhance their pension. By selling off the bits and pieces that they brought back with them.
Well, it sells for more money if they claim that they brought something back and they kept for themselves and it's in their estate.
That's the authenticity.
That makes it special, like when Cernan died and, they discovered something he brought back and kept for himself.
That little bag of things that Neil Armstrong brought back, found in his closet.
Yeah.
And that came up, and that was sold off as well. So somebody made some good money out of that.
Of course, Alan Bean's moon dust in his paintings. Go out in the backyard and grab some more moon dust. I guess it could have come from Hawaii when he was on holidays, who knows. Wherever he was getting it from.
Same place I got mine from, I expect.
Yeah, except the stuff he's using came from a landfill. And everybody wants used dirt from a landfill in their paintings.
Can you imagine how mad people are going to be if they ever find that out?
I won't criticize him as an artist.
He's quite a good artist in his own way.
Once they find out that all this stuff has been taken from a landfill, that $58,000 painting or that $200,000 painting of Alan Bean's is going to be worthless. As a matter of fact, it will be tossed into the trash to be found by somebody else in 50 years.
It's an absolute shame. Like, the one thing I guess we get criticized the most for is the fact that we're not deniers. We want reality. We want to know where the line is. Like, if we can only go 50 miles off the surface and that's it, then that's it. If we can go 70 and that's it, that's it. It's not just the radiation, but the vacuum. Vacuum alone, when you start looking at the force of that vacuum and what it does to materials, especially man-made materials, and then you have the radiation and the temperature and you have the energy, the consumption of energy and everything else that's happening. There's nothing long-term out there because the vacuum is breaking down every material. They're not going to stay up there for a long period of time. And of course, then you have to have a pressurized environment for people to be in and put it into that vacuum, the structure of that machine itself, to keep it secure. And then you have a micrometeor going to damage that. I don't see anything long-term, even in low Earth orbit, for human beings. And of course, we have fantasized about it and faked it for so long that people just go, well, that can't be. It's been happening. They're doing this and this and this. For the Artemis program to sit there and have a half a dozen solar mass ejections, which basically ripped apart the magnetic field of the Van Allen belts, and they come back and don't even mention it. There was 3, like I put that chart up there. There's 3 in, like, today. Yep. 3 or 4 while they're coming back. And what are they going to say? Oh, we got lucky? We just missed it? No, it didn't.
It's the luck of Apollo. Remember that?
That's right. But they don't even mention that. And then they show the live with the skip re-entry where the thing's already hanging at 100,000 feet and going, now it's going to go into a skip re-entry. We're going to lose communication, and then the camera goes off. 2 minutes later, it comes back on and go, oh, it just did the skip re-entry, and now it's coming in, right? And doing the thing. I mean, these guys are sitting there going, okay, you ready to push it out the back of the plane, put it on the parachutes, and come down beside it, right? It's just nonsense. That thing would not have survived. And then to sit and show us on the near side of the moon, and they're claiming to be on the far side of the moon. And if they have to fake that, it's because they weren't there. That launch was horrible. The speed and everything else they've got on there could not have made orbit. The main boosters, the solid fuel boosters, were, what, 1 minute and 40 seconds, and they were gone. And they weren't anywhere near its speed, not even the speed of what Apollo was doing at that kind of thing. And on top of that, if they bring that back, the absorbed radiation for the solar ejections that happened over that time period, that is just a toxic piece of radioactive garbage that they've got in their hands. And what are they going to do? They're going to put it in the museum. And they just write that off as well. Oh, we got something that doesn't absorb radiation. Just write it off. I don't know why they do that. Like I said, I put the chart up there just for the month of December, right? Well, it's running 29 of them. Some of them not so severe, but other ones are. But when you have multiples, that one that was multiple just before they came back, like before they hit re-entry, they went through one that took the Van Allen belts and completely disrupted the magnetic field. And then 2 more pushing it through, and the auroras have been absolutely brilliant. And the power outages were in China down through Australia. When I look at that and I go, hey, this crap, if it's out there, it would be damaged. I don't think they put anything anywhere. The only live feed that you see is within Earth's atmosphere. And they're sitting there going, here's the live feed showing the curvature of the Earth and stuff. And you can see that from a balloon at 100,000 feet. And they say, oh, in a minute and 43 seconds, it's going to do a skip re-entry. I don't think so.
I was just trying to show on this one the difference between this Orion capsule and the one in December 2014, which is covered in heat shields. This one isn't.
They're shooting a camera out the window.
Yeah, exactly.
If they're claiming that the skin is thicker and has more radiation protection, it still has windows.
There's the capsule in the sea. It's got windows in it. Where's the heat shield on the capsule? It was supposed to be covered in heat shield, including the windows.
You can see that from a high-altitude balloon at 100,000 feet. And they haven't gone into the skip re-entry. You just heard them talking about going into skip re-entry. And just after that, then it blacks out for the so-called skip re-entry.
Yeah, and Orion is right on the money.
And that is absolute nonsense.
If it was skip re-entry, we'd see the horizon changing position.
Well, they just black the camera out when it goes into that.
Probably because they'll say it's the plasma.
They're saying they're going into blackout as soon as they get the plasma heating up around it. But the height of that you're looking at, I've seen images of high-altitude balloons show the same image as that.
Well, of course they do. 20 miles up, 100,000 feet.
They're going 25,000 miles an hour coming in for a skip re-entry. So even if they're a minute away, they're 20,000 miles out farther, right? Doesn't make sense. And they haven't gone into skip re-entry. And they're traveling at 25,000 miles an hour. You're going to see something out that window, aren't you?
You would expect so, yes.
At 25,000 miles an hour, you're going to see something. You don't see anything. That's just floating there. Everybody thinks that the Houston Control Center has to have a certain look to it, so they've updated it with new screens and stuff, right? They still got all the rows in there. If everything is up to date and automated, they don't need a room that size. They don't need that many people. They're just giving you the image because that's what you expect the control room for a rocket to be. All those guys in there, all those screens in there. It's laid out exactly the same as Apollo. Look at it. You expect that. That's exactly what they did in the 1960s. This is what the control room looks like, so it's going to be exactly the same as that today, so that it looks, makes it look more realistic.
Moon rock. Here we go. Bit of brick here. It's genuine moon rock. Anybody prove it's not? No, you can't. Let's get it nice and close so you can see it. There we go.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice bit of moon rock. Easily transportable amount. Probably Apollo 17, so I can imagine Gene Cernan hitting it with his hammer to break it up, brought it all back to Earth, and here it is in the UK. Wow. Well, I just put a little notice on it saying moon rock. And everybody will pay a huge amount. No, it'd be easier for me to cut it into several pieces and sell them all separately. Oh dear, what a game it all is.
The only thing we're really looking for is reality. And if we can't go anywhere, if the radiation, if the vacuum, and all the other factors, they should do it right. But what is happening is they're trying to hide this information. So they're teaching people in universities. The instructors are teaching students the wrong information. The only thing they can be are parrots. Like that gentleman says, here, I'll show you what vacuum can do, right? Here's the real numbers. We've listened to people from NASA saying it's not a problem. They're taking the information down from the studies that they've done because they don't want people to know. People with PhDs are commenting underneath our videos going, You're wrong. You're lying. It's only this. It's only that. A vacuum is only this much, right? Well, here's a guy working in the industry going, they are lying.
Yes, they're lying. And we're right.
The problem they had with Apollo 15 is they didn't have another machine to work with. They had 2 or 3 on the set, but they didn't have anything that was actually up and functioning. They had to continue using that. And by the time you got to 16, yeah, they had more. Then all of a sudden now you got 2 of them on the set. And the same with 17, then they had 2 on the set. And you can see those things. They didn't have a backup, but whatever happened on that first one, they had to keep using that same machine. Broken, and they fixed it, and you can see it being repaired.
But were they repairing it with duct tape?
They had a whole lot of nonsense going on there. Like, the official documents claimed that they lost the 1 battery.
I was surprised they didn't lose all the batteries, because the electrolyte would just evaporate, wouldn't it?
That's the other problem. That's exactly what would have happened had they been on the lunar surface. So when they dropped it, when they were faking it, they actually dropped the lamp. The damn thing yanked right off. You can see the broken cables where it hit the ground, broke the steering, broke the seats, damaged the fenders. All of that's visible on the thing, and damaged the tires. They're all wrinkly and stuff like that from being banged around. All of that's on that rover. And the official documents saying that they only had rear-wheel steering and one of the batteries had failed, so they only had 2 motors running it. Well, if you start pulling an extra load and the battery usage goes way down, well, they seem to have the same battery usage with only half the battery, but when you have 2 quarter-horse motors running, pulling that weight, they're now under extreme load. That battery usage would go way up.
Perhaps they were waiting for a solar flare to add more power to the rover.
On their second EVA, they got the 4-wheel steering back. Parked it in the shade overnight. That's Jerry Stone. But your battery life would go all to hell, because you're now being driven with only half the engines, and they're going to be loaded to the max to try and pull the additional weight. Your distance is going to go down. They didn't lose any distance. They still went the exact plan. You go back to the cue cards, and here's all their stations. They didn't lose any time getting there. Nothing. The equipment has changed.
Yeah, it's magic. Strange things happen on the moon.
He's doing a Marcel Marceau. He's on a cable. He's got a cable restraint on him because he can't walk forward. He's sliding back against the cable. Oh, well, look at the angle he's on. Trying to lean forward against the cable to try and get it to come across farther. There, he's sliding back again. Well, he's leaning against the cable right there. Oh, look at him slide back there. Oh my God. That is great. He's getting dragged by that cable and it won't come forward for him. Look at how far he has to lean to get some traction there. Look at how far his leg's back. Look at it. He's getting dragged back there. Oh my God. What the hell's that? Up on the left-hand side, what's that big arm doing hanging down there? There's so much garbage on the ground everywhere. It's all over the place. Do you imagine these guys having to do this and perform and then get up in front of the public and claim that they landed on the moon? No wonder they sat there with their heads down, down, down.